Pickles is the software with a combination of services that we've created that originally started out as a way for people to tap into their creativity and really help to build that muscle to fuel innovation. But it's evolved into a new way for people to connect and build community together.
All right, this is another episode of the Form Your Own Pack podcast from Founders Pack. This one is me in Zurich and Chris Bent from Pickles. You're in Tahiti right now.
I am. I'll give you a little view. It is bright
Wow.
and sunny and 9:30 in the morning.
Beautiful. Well, it's about 8:30 here at night, so I'm excited to talk to you. We've had an exciting trip here in Switzerland, my first time. So for people that don't know, who is Chris Bent and what is Pickles?
So I am an entrepreneur, speaker, and artist. I actually make art out of business cards because I love networking events and I love meeting new people and going to conferences, and I didn't feel very good just throwing them all away. So I have repurposed them and I create all sorts of art out of the interesting business cards that I have collected. And Pickles is the software with a combination of services that we've created that originally started out as a way for people to tap into their creativity and really help to build that muscle to fuel innovation. But it's evolved into a new way for people to connect and build community together.
Wow, very interesting. Okay. So on the business card art, is that kind of like just a personal collection, or have you done kind of like public displays or
Yeah, we have not done any galleries per se, but I have now made about 15 different pieces,
wow,
and
that's
I'm
cool.
actually running out of business cards
You
because
are. Oh,
people
okay.
they just add each other on LinkedIn now, and
Right.
so it's getting more and more rare to actually get a card. But I am quite a snob when it comes to them. If you just have a white card with black writing on the front and the back, it's like this is going in the background. But I get pretty
Okay.
excited finding some pinks and yellows and
Oh, there you go.
interesting.
We'll have to
Yeah,
send
yeah,
you one of my wife's cards. She's got a pretty fancy card. So you can throw it into your collection. And when I'm out meeting people in real life, I'll make sure to collect them and send them to you because I don't want to get rid of them as soon as possible.
yeah. I mean, once you add them on LinkedIn or you follow up with them, it's like,
What do I
what
need
do I
this
do with
for?
this now?
Yeah,
But it's also almost like a trading card in a way. Like you're not gonna
true.
throw away your trading card for your sports hero. And if you had an amazing conversation with someone, it didn't sit right with me to just kind of toss it in the bin and think about this person's contact information in this conversation that I have just growing mold and getting dumped in some landfill. So that's why I upcycled them. It's a
Upcycling. We
free
love it.
art source, and yeah, it's fun.
And actually, it just reminds me that, one of the things that we wanted to do for founders that we interview this year is create like a little baseball card, like a digital baseball card on their profile. And I totally forgot. I've not been doing that. We made the format and everything. So I have to get someone to start going back to the first 5, 6, 7 episodes we just released and make sure that we have baseball cards for you, Chris, and everybody else. Founder
I
baseball
love that
cards.
idea.
Okay, well, I'll,
That'd be
I'll
so
bounce it
cool.
off you and you can help make sure that we design it correctly. Maybe we can co-design it on Pickles.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then we can mint it as an NFT. This is the new business that we got.
There you go. All right. So anybody that wants
Yeah,
anyone that's a
yeah.
subscriber from now on, we'll have to, I still can't figure out how to mint an NFT through half this stuff. So we'll have to work me through that. All right. So then Pickles, what was kind of the process of developing that and where are you guys at in your kind of life cycle of the business?
Yeah, so the process was a long one because this is the first software product that I've ever built. So
Oh,
I
wow.
really had how to go about it, who to talk to, and I started with well, I basically started just tapping into my network, seeing who could help me. And it actually wasn't until a few years in that I first started getting revenue and talking to customers. So it really began as, so my idea was, how do we just let people be more creative, especially if they don't consider themselves a creative? A lot of companies have a creative department, and I think that's kind of shit because it makes everyone else at the company think, all right, well, being creative isn't my job.
Right.
That's those guys over there.
Yep,
And I
that makes
think
sense.
when you give, yeah, but when you have a culture of creativity and you really build this psychological safety and give people autonomy to take charge and make their job and the lives of everyone else around them better, I think it's like the Toyota philosophy of constant little
Kaizen.
improvements that,
Yep.
yeah, kind of, exactly,
Yep.
that make everything better. So that was the initial idea, and it actually manifested itself in the form of a collaborative coloring book. So my thought was, well, I'm not creative and I certainly can't paint, sing, draw, but if you just give me one tiny little piece of, let's say, the Mona Lisa, I can't really screw it up that bad. I just do my little part, and then 1,000 other people could do their tiny little parts, and together we could all spend 1 minute and recreate this fine piece of art and then share it with the world, because there wasn't that pressure to be perfect. You only did your part. You're not responsible for the whole.
Oh, that makes
And
sense.
yeah, and so that's really what Pickles started out as. And then we started not just using it to kind of color over a background image, but ask a question like, how do you feel about your future? Or who are you voting for? And obviously, some of these questions, they're hard to just talk about in a group. But by asking people to draw their responses, you could see visually how everybody thinks and feels. And then that could lead a more inclusive discussion, and one that could kind of go deeper and involve more people than just passing a microphone around a group of people. So that's when it really kind of evolved into this way of engaging a community and building connections between people.
That's really interesting. And it's funny because I think, for example, with Founders Pack, and we'll send you an invite to intros. We launched intros by Founders Pack, and it's just a way to scalably connect people in the group that are other founders to other founders, and you try and frame the conversation, right? So we say, like, these are the things you talk about: technology, talent, data, relationships. But we also have a member in that, Rivet, that recently joined, and they also have that sort of thing, but for companies. And it's the idea is, when you join the company, there's like these silos and people don't talk to each other. So like, it seems like there's like this concerted trend or effort by a lot of companies to try to break those barriers down, probably in part because of remote work, I would imagine, is part of it.
Yeah, and that's a huge thing. I mean, everybody seems to love remote work. I mean, you and I were both remote working, and having to stay in an office and commute in San Francisco, all of that is just loses a huge appeal. But then you also lose that synchronicity of running into people, of
Right.
bouncing ideas, and loneliness, to be honest. Like, people
Right.
are just feeling disconnected from their work, from the mission, from each other. And I think being able to build these networks, feel like you are all pulling in the same direction, part of the mission, and contributing to the success of the company, it's hugely important.
That's really interesting. So that makes a lot of sense. We're obviously committed to helping founders because it's a very isolating experience, right? They're on their own, they're in their silo, they don't have peers that they can relate to. And then in companies, that makes sense too. It's like suddenly you've made all these people remote, and you're trying to break down the barriers to meeting other people in the company or sharing ideas. And the reason that people want it, there's all these stories the last week, as where like Disney says, well, minimum 4 days a week, you have to be in the office or you're gone. Right. We see like,
Yeah.
Twitter, Elon similarly, because it's like, well, we're missing that creativity between and the communication between people that happen in the halls. And I'm like, well, how much work are they getting done? But something like this would totally, I can totally see it. Like it actually makes a ton of sense now that you say it that way. It's like, this is a way that even if they are remote, we could have shared creative experience and work together.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Super interesting.
yeah, I just think creativity is a superpower that we all have, but like a lot of things, you need to use it or you lose it. And it's one of the biggest skills that we're going to need in the future as everything else is getting automated. All of
Right.
this repetitive tasks. It's really our imagination that we're going to be putting to work and having that building creative confidence in people so that they can use their imaginations and really bring everything that they can to their job.
That's a really good point. Because when you think people are like watching what's happening in public with, for example, Chat GPT, and
Mm-hmm.
I last week said, can you write a contract that says, these are the key things? And it wrote it.
Yeah.
Right. I've
Yeah.
taken articles and said, can you, check this or re-summarize it or pull up these bullet points, and it did it. And it's like in seconds, right? So that's normally probably a job for someone. So to your point,
Mm-hmm.
like I think that makes a lot of sense, which is, well, all right, well, how do we get people to be more creative and get away from these repetitive tasks? And actually, in Automate and Grow, not to be selfish, but one of the things that I wrote about was three, every entrepreneurs always should have three buckets that they fill every quarter. The stuff that's annoying you, make a list. That's your A list. That stuff you get rid of. You stop doing.
Mm-hmm.
The stuff that's repetitive but important, you automate.
Mm.
And that should free your time as an entrepreneur to do C, which is the stuff that inspires you, is creative, and really drives big value. So I can see where you fit into that third bucket. And now you've got a tool where you can do this not in a silo, but with other people.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just let those ideas bounce off of each other. And yeah, I love that mindset too, because honestly, those first two things, like people don't want to do the same thing over and over again. It's mind numbing.
I agree.
We were talking before this about Salesforce and how my previous company, I had to leave a voicemail and mark it as voicemail in Salesforce. And I just started to hate my own voice after, because I knew they don't want to listen to my voicemail. And it was, yeah, something that's probably going to be automated or hopefully
Yeah,
just done away
totally.
with as a best practice. But
I already thought of
yeah.
a way to automate that. So we can, as soon as you said that, well, listen, I do want to be conscious of your time. I know you got to go enjoy the day in Tahiti. Couple quick questions. One is, if you could offer other founders only one piece of advice, what would that be?
Might say intermittent fasting, which is a weird
Oh,
piece of
really?
advice,
Okay.
but I have found that by not eating for breakfast, for lunch, I have a lot more energy and it frees up the decision making because every founder needs to make a ton of decisions. And
Right.
if you're not deciding in the morning, am I going to eat this croissant or am I going to have oatmeal? Like, I have black coffee and water, and I do that till about 2 p.m. And that means that I have from the morning when I wake up around 7 to 2 of basically uninterrupted time to focus. And it's also made my overall health a lot better because I can just eat whatever the hell I want when I do open my feeding window. And I think if we're going general advice
Yeah.
for all founders and honestly for all people, I think just not constantly being eating food and digesting food.
Right.
It can be kind of a shift that, I mean, I feel much clear headed and energized when I have an empty stomach. And I think a lot of people don't even get that feeling because they're just constantly eating, which
I
no fault of
I
their
I
own.
totally, it sounds like strange advice, but I have found the exact same thing. I used to have this thing where I would crash at 3 or 3:30, and it was just out of habit because that's what you thought you were supposed to do, is eat two or three times a day. And I think the bulletproof was the first thing that kind of clued me in. And even that, I've scaled that back to my own version, which is essentially just coffee with a little bit of MCT and some superfood creamer. And then you're good to like
Nice.
2, 3, 4. And I totally agree with that. That's really actually interesting advice. Nobody has said that, not even me, and I do it. And it's first of all, it's probably about 22 pounds difference in your life
Mhm.
that you're not carrying around for no reason.
Right.
And the clarity and the energy are like totally different. So that is actually great advice, I think.
Yeah. And once you create that habit, it's just like, I mean, it's like when Mark Zuckerberg wears the same gray shirt every day. It's
Yeah,
something that you figure out once and you don't have to figure out again.
that makes
And
sense.
it's related to that. Like I eat oatmeal as my first meal
That too.
every single time, basically. Like I'll have oatmeal with bananas and peanut butter and blueberries and chia seeds and flax seeds if I can get them. And sometimes I fancy it up, but it's always that same first meal. And then that's basically like half my day. Then I just need to figure out what I'm going to have for dinner.
That's
And it's
wild.
healthy,
Wow.
easy. And if you can cope with doing the same thing every day, it really gives you a lot of freedom to explore in other aspects of your life.
That's great advice. All right. What has the role of community or partnerships been in your success so far?
It's honestly been everything. We haven't spent a dime on marketing. It has all been creating partnerships, working together, and tapping into other people's community to gain exposure and to get out there into the world. So, I mean, I think that you will have a successful business if you make other people successful, and finding which communities, which organizations, who you can lift, just do that and you will have a successful business yourself.
I love it. And that's obviously core to our focus as Founders Pack is to help people form their own pack. So I'm excited to hear that. And I totally concur. I did want to mention one other thing. You brought up the Toyota example of Kaizen. And I don't know if you know, but the inspiration for Founders Pack was really the Japanese Keiretsu. And the Toyota is in that conglomerate model. They're a vertical Keiretsu with partnerships down the vertice with suppliers and subcontractors and companies. And so the Kaizen is a central theme, though, to all those companies, which is continuous daily improvement.
Mm-hmm.
So
Nice.
I like that reference.
Yeah, yeah. Toyota's doing some cool stuff too. I don't know if you've heard of Woven City.
No.
So they are building a city, reimagining it from the ground up. I have a friend who's working there, but their goal is to eventually have 2,500 people
Okay.
all working in this reimagined mobility city. So
Oh,
Toyota
wow.
is reimagining themselves as a mobility company, which comes down to not only transportation,
Mm,
but data and people and ideas. And they are going to create this totally connected city where inventors can come and try out new hypotheses and yeah, they've already built the digital twin for
wow.
it, and now they're laying the piping and the sewers and everything just from the ground below the ground up.
That's very interesting. And so it looks like this is in Japan. So it says Sun Sono or Susono, which is by Mount
Yeah.
Fuji. That seems to be, I don't know if that's physically where they're doing it, but this is really interesting.
Yeah. So big fan of Toyota. I mean,
Cool.
not only do they make awesome cars, but they're really an innovative world. And I feel like that Kaizen, it's just once you internalize it, there's nothing that can stop you.
So I think I just learned a new Japanese word, which is monozukuri, which is craftsmanship.
Hmm. With the
I,
latest technology.
I like that. That's really
Yeah.
interesting. Okay, this is great. I appreciate you pointing this out, and I shared it on screen, so we'll include that actually in our show notes as well. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you, Brian?
You can get in touch with me on LinkedIn. If you just Chris Bent, I should pop up there. Or you can also go to Pickles. It's Piccles, spelled that way because it's a combination of pictures and pixels
That's
put
smart.
together.
Didn't
Yeah.
catch on to
And
that.
so, yeah. And or just drop me a line. My email is chris@pickles.com.
Wonderful. All right. And as you know, because you were nominated, we like you to nominate another guest. We typically talk to founders or investors in scalable or interesting ventures. Who would you, Chris, like to nominate as a future guest of the Founders Pack Form Your Own Pack podcast?
I will nominate my friend Guillaume from Galea. It's
Okay.
a Canadian company, and they're doing some pretty awesome stuff. Originally created a unlockable picture frame to buy art in a cafe. If you saw it and you liked it, you could just scan a QR code, pay for it, and then pull it off the wall
Oh,
and
neat.
walk out with it. And it's really evolved since then, but they are an awesome company.
Okay, Guillaume, you've been nominated as a future guest. We're excited to talk to you. Thank you so much, Chris. I appreciate all of your advice for their founders and everything you're working on. We look forward to following your journey.
Thank you, Michael. This has been a blast.
Yeah, agreed.